Hi, welcome to Daiku Game Pitch, and we are joined today by Jonathan Denham, who is the designer of the Feud. It's a system-neutral RPG adventure about a blood feud. And Jonathan, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Gary. I'm very excited to live up to that epic intro.
Well, sometimes it's a little too much. I get like all nervous. I'm all discombobulated and everything. But anyways, we are here today and we're talking about your game, The Feud. But before we start into on the game, tell us, how did you get involved in this crazy little hobby of ours?
So I was teaching in China and wanted something to do, and I listened to the Penny Arcade podcast of them playing D&D. I was like, "Oh, this sounds easy. I'll do that." Got all of the other teachers involved. Played like one game. I was like, "Oh, that was really fun." But man, combat is just so boring. It just seems to go on forever. And then that cue, 5 or 6 years of scraping away at D&D until I suddenly realized, oh, you just don't have to play D&D. And then I ended up in the sort of the FKR world, and now I'm here.
Well, and we'll talk about FKR and even what that means to the layperson and how your setting can actually be used in a variety of games. But let's just jump right into it and just tell us, what is Feud?
Feud. So Feud is a system neutral adventure, and it's all about a blood feud. The front cover there, which we're seeing, is representing it's a division between communities in this sort of dark age world that Feud is set in. That's the headline, really.
And I love the abstract of people on both sides in the feud. And was that your illustration, or who did that for you?
Yeah. So the whole thing is illustrated with. So that's a lino cut print. So hand carved, hand printed on my kitchen table downstairs, and all of them are that, and they're just scanned in to become the illustrations for it. Also all the way through. So that's me. And it all has this, we'll see a couple more pictures of it, but it all has this kind of similar style, which is a sort of a system neutral art style where it's inviting you to, if you want to take this into like a dark horror, Morkborgy style thing, if you want to do this as kind of more of a heroic OSE sort of style thing, or, you know, the weirdness of Into the Odd, it's sort of inviting you to be a part of that.
And so, what is the overall premise of it, as far as and maybe we can even back up further and like, why a feud? Like, what drew you to the idea of having a feud?
Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. A good question. So the basic premise is captured in that little sentence we're seeing on the screen. We have this world in which there's things like forgotten gods, there's sort of ancient monsters, ancient strangeness, and something has come that is just going to shake up this world totally, and that's the arising of a blood feud. And I've put in the little description underneath. The suggestion is you're going to be playing relatively ordinary people. Now that could be, you know, straight up peasants, as we might think of in that medieval setting. Could be also your kind of like Cairn style adventurer, but with a background that's kind of quite low key. But you're an ordinary person whose world is suddenly disrupted by the presence of blood feud. The reason for the actual blood feud is because this game is inspired by sort of Old English, which is it's the poetry of the people who came to England and other bits of Northern Europe around the collapse of the Roman Empire, Beowulf and stuff like that. And within that world, feud is presented as this absolutely monstrous, nightmarish thing to happen to a society. It's a sort of it is going to change every level of society. It's a sort of unstoppable, weird energy. And I'll be perfectly honest. We'll have a look at this in a moment. But I rolled on a table. I made this game basically off some random tables that I have for my own system, and I rolled feud. And I was like, I'm not doing feud. Feud's really depressing. Like, it's really hard topic. I was like, I'll skip over it. I won't do that one. And I re-rolled. And I think I literally rolled 4 times in a row. And I think it actually came up feud every single time. And then I was just like, well, I'm going to have to do it.
The gods have spoken. You're going to be dealing with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back to the idea of the feud itself, one of the things that's like really appealing is like that just so entrenched anger and blood feud that grips like every action that you do in a game or like as NPCs or the world, that you can't get away from it. And it's just like it's a dark, ominous overhang of the society.
Yeah. So this is this is one of these games that is very fun to run as a GM. So you can see here my little tag is the weird, and that's because in my kind of instance, you play as the world as the GM. You're not a GM refereeing necessarily for sort of other people playing. You are the person experiencing it. It's kind of an aside, really, but you get to take on the idea of I am the blood feud in this world. I am this feud, and the players are going to be doing the things they're doing. They're going to be interacting and doing all the politics and the exploring and the adventuring and the combat and whatever it is that comes up. But all the time, I represent the growing, inevitable malice of the feud. If you skip on to the next slide, sorry, Gary.
Yep. No, the feud must grow.
The feud must grow. And that there in the world, we see there are very few, I've already mentioned this is a system neutral. You can play it almost any way you want to play it. But the one like rule in the game that I get across is this phrase, the feud must grow. I repeat it from lots of different characters' perspectives. And there's even a bit where you hear an ancient law code, you hear the law of the land, and it's a literal law. The feud must grow. Once it's happened, it has to progress.
And then you now have this on Kickstarter. It's running until Monday, October the 9th. Yep. And you're very close to reaching your funding goal. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But as far as what do people get from the Kickstarter?
Yeah, we are close to reaching the funding goal. In fact, we're even closer than those slides. I'm 84% now, I think, which is good for me. Very happy about it. So you can back and get a PDF copy. This is a 60-page zine, A5 zine. It's printed by a local company, all black and white, all illustrated throughout in the same style. There you go, in this sort of style. You can get a copy of the booklet itself, the zine itself, and also there are these set of add-ons for 2 different prices for the original prints of the things we're looking at here on the screen. So that there is a little, quite a small print about this sort of size, a few inches. And as an add-on, you can get one of the limited edition actual prints. There's a few of them, and they're available as an add-on. For some people, they've been antagonizing over which is the perfect picture to select from the about 12 or so that are in there.
And this is truly like a passion project. You're like, you got the ink. You're making these, and and why that decision? Like, I mean, in today's world, when you can just kind of like fire it off to a printer and
yeah. So there's, I mean, one, the advantage of doing, like, living in a world where you can go on Kickstarter and get people to fund things, which in this game is primarily funding the editing and a couple of other bits of illustration that are in this. But I've always wanted to learn how to do lino cut printing, and so I thought, well, I think it's really good aesthetic. The reason to do it manually, I think, is because of that. The nature of this adventure is, it isn't, how to put this, it's slightly raw, it's slightly rough at the edges. There are gaps, there are mistakes almost, where you will be inserting your own version of this world. You will be drawing things out of it, and I think this artistic style fits with that. It's not clean lines, it's not perfect edges, it's not imitating art. It is a piece of art in some respects, so it has that kind of slightly rougher quality, which I personally think is appropriate, particularly for this setting, this story.
And we talk about on the screen, what makes feud. You talk about the inspirations from the pre-medieval world, and I think you got some other images later on to talk about like some of the inspirations. But just talk to us about like what could people expect when they open this up?
So I think what you'll be expecting is you start essentially on the hex map we saw in a couple of slides ago, and that is this region, and that's really what you're getting. Is you're getting a region with this trigger of the feud happening. So you open up, you get the region, then you get a few pages sort of giving you the story, setting up the basic principles of who the feud is between, how the feud starts, and so forth. But what you're getting, I would suggest, is a world. You are getting, there's 4 different sort of villages. They belong to multiple different factions, depending on your perspective. There's about 12 different characters across that, several monsters, several of these weird gods. And it's all this quite rich, complex, this characters, really. It's quite a real place that you're getting to explore in the way that you feel like exploring.
And system neutral design, we've already kind of touched on it a couple times, but for those that don't know about FKR, so there's probably some people that are like, oh, I love OSR. Tell us, if you're watching at home and you're an OSR fan, FKR is where it's at.
I 100% agree. FKR is where it's at. So FKR, like, so it has this full name of free Kriegspiel, something or other. But the basic principle is that the way you want to play is the way you're allowed to play. That you want to take a game like Feud, an adventure like Feud, and you want to use some of the dice systems from Into the Odd. You use those dice systems. You want to use character backgrounds from Ken. You use those character backgrounds. This is I was thinking of an analogy. It's like it's a little box of tricks and toys that you get to pick up with and play in any way you want, and that is the essence of FKR in my mind, and it's the essence of what we might call system neutral design. I'm, as a designer, I'm stepping back almost and saying, you get to do what you want to do with this product. I am doing a couple of little conversions because some of the backers have wanted them, and I'm really happy to do them. To Ken and OSE to start, and probably Into the Odd as well. But irrespective of that, you can play this game any way you want. Yeah, and that's that FKR system neutral sort of mentality in my mind, at least.
You could even use this in a 5e setting.
You could easily use this. Yeah, you could. If you do that little bit of work to just, figure out how you... Fireball may not necessarily be an appropriate spell in this sort of quite low fantasy sort of a setting, but you 100% could use 5e, Pathfinder, any of them. You could even use, if you really wanted to. I met a person who is designing a PBTA style game that's all about the same sort of world, same sort of characters. You could lift those moves over and play them in this setting if you wanted to.
And FKR, I keep meaning to. I'm thinking about doing like an FKR panel because like it's one of those complicated yet very simple subject matters that you could probably talk for hours and hours on. But needless to say,
yes.
a free Kriegspiel Revolution is a way of playing that takes the rules kind of out of it and puts you in the world, and it's a lot more of an immersion from my perspective and many other FKR evangelists.
Yeah, I agree. And Feud is a perfect place to try it out.
Dip your toes in the FKR world.
Yeah.
And then so you've got your region creation.
Yeah, so this is thinking about like where Feud came from, and I've already kind of touched on this, so I'll just say it quite quickly. But in the background of Feud is essentially this big game system called the Weird Lands, which I haven't really released much of yet. And Feud is kind of like a product of that. There are these perchance generators I made where you can try it out. I'm sure we can find a link for them somewhere. But it's all about creating worlds in what I call the Weird Lands. So that's one of the sources of it. And then the other source, possibly the slightly more exciting one, is the history and the poetry on the next slide. There we go. So just very briefly, the inspiration, and I think ultimately it's what makes, in my mind at least, Feud, bordering on unique in some regards, is it's not a game inspired by what we can call the faux medieval of a lot of other sort of adventuring style games, D&D, and all of its sort of like associates, which all have this. There are kingdoms and keeps and castles, and they might be at the end of the world. It might be a mork bog, everything is destroyed. But there were kingdoms, there were castles, there were judges, there were lawyers, there was infrastructure. But the world of the very early medieval period is not like that. It's not our world at all. It's a very, very different place. And so when you as a player in this world, there is no hope. There's no help from outside. There's no merchants coming through. You can't just go and buy a new sword. There's not a healer anywhere knocking around. Like it's a much smaller world. And just to be clear, so much of the detail of it is drawn from the books on the screen there, and then several others. Like the monsters are inspired by things from there. The characters are, the names are, the locations are, the jobs are. A lot of it comes from these sort of historical sources, which I've added, a fun bent to.
And so this is like people carving out a life on the edge of, well, I wouldn't say the edge of the world. That's not the right term, but they are carving out lives in the rugged terrain.
In the land of the Rook's Cradle, which is where Feud is set, it is almost supposed to be the edge of the world. They're living right on the edge of what they call the Ether. It's this endless deep forest where only a handful of hunters and trappers ever dare tread, because that's the realm of death and the gods and the spirits. They are right on the edge of that world.
And then we talked a little bit about your artwork on it, but just for those that don't really understand linograph, just kind of explain like the cutting and how it all works.
Yeah, so you've got here a little photo. That's all of the tools. So you can see on the right, there's these lovely little knives, these little chisels, and you cut those out of a piece of lino, just literally like linoleum that goes on your floor. You buy a slightly nicer version of it. You cut it, you buy some ink, you get a roller, which is what that big thing in the middle is. You roll it on top. You stick a bit of paper on and you go bam, 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 and the ink sticks to the paper and it comes off, and whatever you cut away doesn't get ink on it. I have only just started learning how to do this. There are so many brilliant guides online. It's very easy to do. I'm very tempted to write I think I'm going to write a blog post about how to get into doing it, because if anybody else is looking for is looking to do something like this, it's a really easy, pretty cost-effective way of getting some. It almost just looks good by default, like particularly if you're like that kind of stark black and white quality, which I think a lot of people do. It's kind of quite easy to just make something that looks pretty good. And I illustrated a whole adventure from it, and you can too.
And what kind of paper do you end up putting it on? Like it's a very bespoke product, right? Each one is one of a kind.
Yeah. I did editions of 5. So each print, there's 5 copies of it, and they're all slightly different because the ink sticks in different ways. You can see on the top on the left, that's the ink sort of builds up where it touches and gets in the wrong place, and actually that adds a nice effect to the different editions. The paper is I bought quite nice paper. It's this sort of quite nice Japanese paper that's really for woodcut. So it's very thick. It's quite high quality. There we go. There is a picture of 2 of them. This little paired image of this is the thing that starts the feud. This is somebody's head, which is not attached to their body. And so that's it. Yeah. Oh, well, and then this is. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, go ahead and talk about this as far as the design elements.
Yeah, so I think the other thing that I personally really like about Feud is the design elements. Like, if you can you go back up to slide 7, I think it is. Yeah, stop. There you go. This is the one. So on the right is an image of what one of the pages look like, and they all basically have this structure. Some of them have like other little bits of illustration and stuff on them, but I've gone for this quite like solid presentation all the way through, and as much as possible clean. One of the challenges of system neutral design, which is why I put this on the slide, is mechanics sometimes provide structure for the reader. You sort of jump between the, target numbers, you see them and you use off them. So the layout and the order and the simplicity of the language has to be a very high priority in system neutral design, because there aren't those structuring elements from the mechanics. So that there is an instance of what I would think of in my mind as the cleanliness. It's very easy to just go to, so this is a character, Harvetter. You just go to that character and you're just going to read it. And as a GM, you could say to the players, oh, yes, you see Harvetter, and then just go to the right page. It's all indexed. It's all cross-referenced. It's quite easy to find where you need to go and go, he's this person. These little banners then are sort of like some of the decorations on the page. The bottom one with the little question marks is there because if we fund, and I haven't put a formal stretch goal, but if we go about £60, 60 GPP over, I'll be getting a third banner commissioned and done to add a little bit of variety to some of the pages. If we go way over, the same artist, who's a brilliant artist, Mark Cardwell, we might do something a little bit more adventurous with this, but my ambitions I'm keeping sensible.
Cool. And then, so where can people find out more?
So I'm tweeting on at the Weirdlands. You can follow me on TikTok, which is the Weird RPG, which is where I more talk about. I've been sharing bits and bobs of Feud, and also just talk about RPG stuff in general. If anybody's on Discord, the Discord I mostly belong to is the FKR Collective. I just started a YouTube channel in order to do some live streams. I was supposed to do my first one yesterday, but things got in the way and it didn't happen. Where I'm mostly going to be doing, I want to stream doing the conversions of Cairn and OSC, because I find that quite fun content to watch other people designing games, so I may as well have a go. And I've just realized I missed off one quite important one from this list, Gary, which we'll put in a link somewhere, which is to my itch page, which is theweird.itch.io, the same spelling as you see on the screen there.
Okay,
that's
I'll
actually probably my homepage, really.
I'll update
so of course I forgot it.
I'll update the description. Some of the links are in the description already. And then let's go to your Kickstarter here. We're very close to funding here. We got 40 pledges, 40 backers. We got 12 days to go, and you've got your Kickstarter video and some of the behind the scenes stuff, all the stuff that we've maybe talked about in a little bit more detail. And I've said this many times, indie game designers, get out there and support other indie game designers. It's an important thing that we support each other in the community. So go check it out. All the links will be in the description, and let's get this one past the funding goal.
Good.
And it's probably too early to talk, but I'm sure this is going to fund. You talked about a little bit about your system. What's next for you as far as the kind of design goals?
Okay, so it's one of two things, right? I've got a big interest in thinking about adventure design from the perspective of events. This is going to sound very theoretical. I'm a very theoretical person. I apologize. So what I'm thinking of doing is an adventure set in the same world, but about this ancient warrior wizard empress called the Peacock, whose armies of strange creatures ravaged the land about a century ago, and try and capture her story in 7 different events, and the players will move through. They'll be the same characters, but moving through this person's life in 7 different things. So that's my next big adventure. But the big project is the Weirdlands. It's this sort of underlying system that I started about 8 years ago, really, and I'm hoping to release that all basically for free as the background system to some of these adventures if you wanted to use them, but you don't need to. So yeah, that's me. That's my ambitions over the next 2 or 3 years.
Cool. I just want to say, Jonathan, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your work. Like I said, everybody out there, support indie game design by supporting people like Jonathan on Kickstarter, and you get more content like this. So just wanted to say good luck to you, and it sounds like a lot of interesting projects that you've got in your mind.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary. It's been a real pleasure being on.
Cool. And if you are an indie game designer and you want to share your game on Daiku Game Pitch, feel free to reach out. And if you do, go to daikugames.com/gamepitch and tell them, I can't even get this on. Tell them Game Pitch Gary sent you.
Hey friends, are you looking for a game that is not Dungeons or Dragons? Well, we got exactly what you need at Daiku Game Pitch. We got zines, we got OSR, we got adventures. But wait, there's more. We got solo games, we got journaling games, we even got card games and dice games. Oh hell, I don't even know what kind of game this is, but we got it. And if you visit us in the next 2 minutes, you're gonna get all the Zine Quest, Zine Months, Itch Fund, and Backer Kits Kickstarters that you can handle. Visit us at www.daikugames.com and tell them a Game Pitch Gary sent ya.